My father signed my death warrant with a golden pen. Not a metaphor. An actual pen, 18-karat gold, encrusted with diamonds along the barrel, a gift from the Sultan of Brunei. I watched him lift it from the velvet-lined case on his desk, watched the chandelier light catch the stones as he uncapped it slowly, deliberately. The paper beneath his hand was cream-colored, watermarked with our family crest, a falcon clutching a sword. Even my execution was luxury. "Sign here," he said, his voice calm as still water. He slid the document across the mahogany desk, wood imported from Brazil, polished so smooth you could see your face in it like a mirror. "Renounce this Jesus, or I renounce you. Permanently." The room smelled of oud, rich, woody, expensive. The same scent that had filled my childhood, my adolescence, every corner of the palace. Now it smelled like a funeral. I looked at the paper. At the blank line waiting for my signature. At the paragraph above it written in Arabic calligraphy so beautiful it could have been framed in a museum. I, Princess Amira bint Abdullah Al Maktoum, do hereby declare that I have abandoned the false teachings of the Christian faith and reaffirm my submission to Allah and His Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. My hands were shaking. My father's were not. "Baba," I started. "Don't." He raised one finger. "Just one. That's all it took." In our family, in our world, my father didn't need to shout. He was the Emir. His whisper carried more weight than other men's screams. "You will sign, Amira. Or you will be dead to this family. Dead to this nation. And if you try to leave," he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Well. Accidents happen. Even to princesses. But let me take you back. Back to the palace where this nightmare began. Back to the golden cage I called home. I was born in the Zabil Palace in Dubai, not the one tourists photograph from the highway, but the private royal residence most people don't even know exists. 47 bedrooms. 63 bathrooms. Hallways so long you could drive a golf cart through them, and we did. The floors were Italian marble, imported from Carrara, the same quarries Michelangelo used. So white it hurt your eyes in the sunlight. So polished you could see your reflection in every step, a girl drowning in gold, suffocating in silk. My bedroom alone was 2,000 square feet. Bigger than most people's homes. I had a walk-in closet the size of a boutique, 47 designer abayas, custom-made by houses in Paris and Milan. Dior. Chanel. Valentino. Some had Swarovski crystals hand-sewn into the fabric, 15,000 crystals on one abaya alone. I counted them once, during Ramadan, when I was supposed to be fasting and praying but instead sat on my closet floor wondering why I owned a piece of clothing worth $180,000 that I'd worn once. My bathroom had gold fixtures. Not gold-plated. Solid gold. The faucets, the towel racks, even the toilet handle. When I washed my hands, I was literally touching wealth most people would never see in their lifetimes. The bathtub was carved from a single block of onyx, imported from Iran. It took 12 men to carry it into the palace. I had everything. And I had never felt more empty. Every morning, my personal maid, Fatima, a sweet Filipino woman who'd worked for our family for 20 years, would wake me at 6 a.m. She'd prepare my bath, lay out my clothes, bring me breakfast on a silver tray, fresh dates from Medina, honey from Yemen, pastries from our French chef. Everything perfect. Everything expensive. Everything tasting like absolutely nothing. "Good morning, Your Highness," she'd say, bowing slightly. Always bowing. I hated that bow. I'd sit at my vanity, antique, Louis XVI, purchased at auction for $340,000, and stare at myself in the mirror while Fatima brushed my hair. 100 strokes, every morning, the same ritual. And I'd look at the girl staring back at me and think, who are you? I didn't know. I knew I was Princess Amira bint Abdullah Al Maktoum. Third daughter of His Highness Amir Abdullah. Granddaughter of the founder of modern Dubai. My family tree was taught in schools. My great-grandfather's face was on currency. Our name opened every door in the Gulf, every business deal, every diplomatic meeting, every secret the oil kingdoms whispered to each other in marble conference rooms. But who was I? I didn't get to decide. I had 47 designer abayas. I had 0 choices. I couldn't choose my friends, they were selected from appropriate royal families. I couldn't choose my education, my father decided I'd study international relations, something suitable for a princess. I couldn't choose where I went, every outing required approval, security, surveillance. I couldn't choose what I believed, that was written into my birth certificate, my passport, my very existence, Muslim. Sunni. Unquestionable. I lived in a palace with 327 rooms, but I was more trapped than any prisoner in the detention centers my father's government operated in the desert. At night, after the servants left, after the palace grew quiet except for the footsteps of security guards echoing through corridors, I'd stand at my bedroom window, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Dubai skyline, and watch the city lights. The Burj Khalifa piercing the sky like a needle. The artificial islands shaped like palm trees. The highways flowing with Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Billions of dollars of development, built by my family's vision and oil money. And I'd press my hand against the glass, bulletproof, 3 inches thick, and feel the barrier between me and the world. I was 24 years old. I had never been grocery shopping. Never driven a car by myself. Never had a conversation with a man who wasn't family without 3 chaperones present. Never made a decision about my own life that mattered. The palace smelled of oud and roses, expensive perfumes covering the stench of secrets. Because every family has secrets, but royal families have secrets that could collapse governments. I knew which of my uncles had mistresses in London. Which cousin was drinking in private despite public piety. Which business deals involved bribes that would make international headlines if they ever leaked. And I knew the biggest secret of all. We were dying inside our golden cages, and no one was allowed to say it out loud. Amira, you are so blessed, my mother would say, adjusting her Hermes scarf, one of 73 in her collection. Do you know how many girls would trade places with you? All of them, probably. And every single one would regret it. Because here's what they don't tell you about being royal: money is the most beautiful prison ever built. And I was dying inside mine. The night I found that book, everything changed. But I didn't know yet that it would cost me everything I'd ever known, and give me the only thing I'd ever truly needed. My father was not a monster. That's what made him so terrifying. Monsters are easy to identify, they snarl, they rage, they show you their teeth. But my father, His Highness Emir Abdullah bin Rashid Al Maktoum, was a gentleman. Educated at Oxford. Fluent in 5 languages. He wore Italian suits tailored in Milan, smelled of Tom Ford cologne, and had a smile that made diplomats and presidents feel at ease. He'd never raised his hand to me. Never raised his voice. He didn't need to. I was 12 the first time I understood what kind of man my father really was. We were having dinner in the formal dining room. The table was 30 feet long, could seat 40 people, but that night it was just our immediate family. My parents at opposite ends like distant continents. My 3 older brothers on one side. Me and my 2 younger sisters on the other. The chandelier above us cost $2.3 million. It had 12,000 crystals imported from Austria. I know because my father told us, the night it was installed. Excellence, he'd said, looking up at it, is in the details. That particular dinner, my eldest brother Khalid, 20 years old, already being groomed to take over certain business operations, was late. 10 minutes late. We all sat in silence, waiting, because you don't start eating until the emir begins. The food was getting cold. French onion soup, Wagyu beef from Japan, saffron rice that cost more per gram than silver. When Khalid finally arrived, breathless, apologizing, my father didn't look at him. Just continued cutting his beef with surgical precision. Sit, Baba said quietly. Khalid sat. We ate in silence for exactly 4 minutes. I counted the seconds in my head, the way I'd learned to count my father's moods by the length of his silences. Then my father set down his knife and fork. Aligned them perfectly on his plate. Dabbed his mouth with the linen napkin, Egyptian cotton, 1,000 thread count. Khalid, he said softly. Why were you late? I'm sorry, Baba. Traffic, and I. Did I ask for an excuse? Still soft. Still calm. No, Baba. I asked for a reason. The difference seemed meaningless to me at 12. But Khalid understood. I was careless with my time. I disrespected you and the family. My father smiled. Good. You understand. He lifted his water glass, Baccarat crystal, took a small sip. Your car. Give Hassan the keys after dinner. Hassan was our head of security. Baba, You don't need it anymore. If you cannot manage your time with a vehicle, you'll manage it without one. For 6 months. Hassan will drive you everywhere. Like a child. He picked up his fork again. Now eat your soup before it gets cold. Khalid's hands were shaking so badly he could barely lift his spoon. He was 20 years old. And he'd just been stripped of his independence in front of his entire family, because of 10 minutes. That's when I learned, my father's weapon wasn't violence. It was control. Absolute, suffocating, elegant control. And 16 years later, sitting across from him in his private office, the one with walls lined with first edition books he'd never read and awards from governments he'd influenced, I felt exactly like Khalid had felt that night. Powerless. It was a Thursday evening. The sun was setting over the Arabian Gulf, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood orange. I'd been summoned to my father's office, not asked, summoned. A servant had knocked on my door at 5 p.m. with a handwritten note on my father's personal stationery, my office. 7 p.m. Come alone. Those 2 words, come alone, made my stomach drop. I walked through the palace hallways toward his wing. The distance from my chambers to his office was 187 meters. I'd measured it once on Google Maps, during one of those sleepless nights when I'd map out escape routes I'd never have the courage to use. Every step echoed on that polished marble. My abaya whispered against the floor, Valentino, black silk with hand-embroidered silver threads along the hem. I'd worn it because it was modest, appropriate, unnoticeable. I wanted to disappear. The guards flanked me without speaking. Ahmed on my right, he'd been with our family for 15 years, had 3 daughters my age. Saeed on my left, younger, harder, the kind of man who'd carry out orders without questions. Neither of them looked at me. That's how I knew something was wrong. We passed the portrait gallery, generations of my family staring down from oil paintings in gilded frames. My great-great-grandfather, who'd united the tribes. My grandfather, who'd signed the oil contracts that made us billions. My father, painted 5 years ago, sitting on a throne that was literally made of gold. All of them watching me walk toward my judgment. When I reached the double doors to my father's office, 14-foot-tall panels of carved teak imported from Myanmar, Ahmed knocked 3 times. Enter, my father's voice called from inside. The guards opened the doors but didn't follow me in. The doors closed behind me with a sound like a tomb ceiling. My father sat behind his desk, a massive thing made from a single piece of petrified wood, 500 million years old, purchased from a collector in Montana for $1.2 million. He was reading something on his iPad, his reading glasses perched on his nose, looking exactly like what he was, a sophisticated, educated, powerful man. Sit, Amira, he said without looking up. I sat in the chair across from him. Louis XVI, matching my vanity. Uncomfortable by design. He continued reading for exactly 90 seconds. I know because I watched the antique clock on his wall, a Patek Philippe, 1920s, one of 17 in the world. Tick. 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 Then he removed his glasses, folded them carefully, set them on his desk. And looked at me. Tea? He asked. My throat was dry as sand. No, thank you, Baba. I insist. He pressed a button on his desk. Instantly, a servant appeared. They were always waiting just outside, invisible until needed, with a silver tray. 2 glasses of Moroccan mint tea, steam rising from them like spirits. My father's favorite. The servant poured, placed a glass in front of me, and vanished. Drink, my father said. It wasn't a request. I lifted the glass with both hands to keep them from shaking. The tea was perfect, sweet, hot, fragrant. It tasted like fear. My father sipped his tea slowly, watching me over the rim of the glass. Then he set it down and slid something across the desk toward me. A photograph. My heart stopped. It was me. In a coffee shop. Western clothes, jeans, a loose sweater, my hair uncovered. Sitting across from a woman I'd met 3 months ago. Sarah. British. Blonde. A teacher at the international school where I occasionally volunteered. And on the table between us, clearly visible in the photograph, a book with a cross on the cover. Would you like to explain this? My father asked. His voice was still calm. Still gentle. That's what made it so horrifying. My mind raced. Who had taken this photo? When? How long had he known? Baba, Before you speak, he interrupted softly, let me save you the embarrassment of lying to your father. We've been monitoring your communications for 6 weeks. Your internet activity. Your phone. Your movements outside the palace. He tapped the photograph. This woman, Sarah Mitchell. British passport. Church of England. She's been meeting with you weekly. Teaching you about, he paused, as if the word physically disgusted him. Christianity. The room tilted. I gripped the armrests of the chair. You've been reading their book. The Bible. You've been watching their videos on YouTube, I have the browser history. You've been filling your mind with poison. He leaned forward slightly. And yesterday, you prayed to their God. In your room. We heard you. Cameras. They'd put cameras in my room. My bedroom. My private space. The only place I thought I was alone. I felt violated. Exposed. Naked. Amira. He said my name the way you'd say the name of a stranger. You are a princess of the Al Maktoum family. Do you understand what that means? You don't just represent yourself. You represent our lineage. Our honor. Our nation. And you have disgraced all of it. Baba, please. I am not finished. He stood from his chair and walked to the window, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the palace gardens. His hands were clasped behind his back. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. Because that's exactly what he was. Do you know what happens to members of royal families who convert? He didn't wait for me to answer. They disappear. Not violently, we're civilized people. But they cease to exist. Stripped of titles. Removed from succession. Exiled. Erased from family records. He turned to face me. There was a princess in Saudi Arabia 12 years ago. Converted to Christianity. The family gave her a choice, renounce it, or leave. She chose to leave. They found her body in Paris 3 months later. Suicide, the police said. He paused. Perhaps it was. The threat was clear. Crystal clear. I don't want that for you, Habibti. The endearment, my beloved, sounded obscene coming from his mouth in that moment. You are my daughter. I love you. Which is why I'm giving you an opportunity to fix this. He walked back to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a document. Multiple pages, stapled together, Arabic calligraphy at the top. You will sign this. A public renunciation of Christianity. An affirmation of your Islamic faith. It will be published in the national newspaper. You will make a statement, I've had it prepared for you, expressing your regret for being momentarily confused by Western influences. He slid the document toward me, along with that golden pen. And this unfortunate episode will be forgotten. I stared at the paper. At the words written there, denouncing Jesus. Calling him a liar. Declaring that Muhammad was the final prophet and I had been foolish to ever doubt it. Everything in me screamed. And if I don't? My voice came out as a whisper. My father sat down. Steepled his fingers. Looked at me with something almost like pity. Then you are no longer my daughter. You are no longer a princess. You will be removed from this palace within 24 hours. Your bank accounts, frozen. Your passport, revoked. Your trust fund, $400 million, dissolved. Every connection, every privilege, every protection our name has given you, gone. He leaned back in his chair. And Amira? If you think you'll run to your Christian friends in the West, think again. I have relationships with governments across Europe and America. Diplomatic immunity works both ways. Extradition treaties. Interpol. We will find you. And we will bring you back to face justice under our laws. Apostasy. The penalty for apostasy in Islamic law. Death. My knees went weak. The room spun. I couldn't breathe. The air was too thick, too hot, suffocating. You have until tomorrow morning, my father said, standing. The meeting was over. 9 a.m. You will come to this office. You will sign this document. Or you will be escorted from the palace and you will never see your family again. He walked to the door, opened it. The guards were waiting outside. I suggest you use the night to pray. To Allah. And ask His forgiveness for your foolishness. I stood on legs that didn't feel like mine. Walked toward the door. Past my father without looking at him because I knew if I looked at him, I would shatter completely. Amira. His voice stopped me at the threshold. I turned. He was holding that gold dagger from his desk. The one he'd shown Khalid once. The one that had tasted the blood of traitors. Choose wisely, he said quietly. Family traitors don't get second chances. The guards escorted me back to my chambers. Locked the door from the outside. And I collapsed on that $250,000 Persian rug and realized, I had never been more powerless in my entire life. That was the night I learned what powerless really meant. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I sat on the floor of my bedroom, that massive, 2,000 square foot prison cell with its gold fixtures and silk curtains and million-dollar view, and felt the walls closing in. The clock on my nightstand glowed, 11:47 p.m. I had 9 hours and 13 minutes until my father expected me in his office. 9 hours to choose between everything I'd ever known and everything I'd just begun to discover. Between my family and Jesus. Between life and death. The door was locked from the outside. I'd tried it 3 times, even though I knew it was useless. The windows didn't open, they never had. Security feature. Climate control. The official reasons. But the real reason was simpler, to keep us in. I walked to the window and pressed my forehead against the glass. Cool. Smooth. Bulletproof. Below me, the palace garden stretched out in geometric perfection, Italian cypress trees, rose bushes from Damascus, fountains that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. All of it illuminated by lights that made it look like a dream. A beautiful dream you couldn't wake up from. My phone was on my bed. They hadn't taken it yet, that would come in the morning if I refused to sign. I picked it up and stared at the screen. No messages. No calls. Sarah didn't know. My sisters didn't know. No one knew that in 9 hours, my life would either end or transform into something unrecognizable. I pulled up my contacts. Scrolled through the names. Princesses. Sheikh has. daughters of ministers and oil executives. Friends, or what passed for friends in our world. Women I'd had tea with, shopped with, posed with for photographs at charity galas. Could I call any of them? Tell them what I was facing? I knew the answer. If I told them I was considering Christianity, they'd report me to their fathers before I finished the sentence. Apostasy wasn't a private matter. It was treason. It was contagious. It had to be rooted out immediately. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. I set the phone down and walked to my private bathroom, the one with the gold faucets and onyx bathtub, and turned on the light. Stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My face was pale. I looked like a ghost haunting my own life. Who are you? I whispered to my reflection. Princess Amira bint Abdullah Al Maktoum. Third daughter. Expendable daughter. The one who could be erased without disrupting the line of succession. Or was I something else? Someone else? Sarah had told me, 3 weeks ago, sitting in that coffee shop with the Bible between us, Amira, you're not just a princess. You're a daughter of God. Created in His image. Loved beyond measure. You have infinite worth, not because of your family name, but because of whose you are. I'd cried when she said it. Right there in the coffee shop, tears streaming down my face, because I'd never, not once in 24 years, heard anyone say I had worth beyond my title. But now, standing in my bathroom at midnight, that worth felt like a cruel joke. Because what good was being loved by a God I couldn't see when the Father I could see was about to destroy me? I need to pray. The thought came suddenly, desperately. I needed to pray. Needed to ask for help, for guidance, for some kind of intervention that would make this nightmare stop. I walked to my closet and pulled out my prayer mat, silk, embroidered with gold thread, a gift from my grandmother. I'd prayed on this mat 5 times a day for as long as I could remember. 5 times a day, facing Mecca, reciting the words I'd memorized as a child. Allahu Akbar. God is the greatest. Subhana Rabbil Adhim. Glory be to my Lord, the Most Great. I spread the mat on the floor, facing east toward Mecca, toward the Kaaba, that black cube in the desert that Muslims worldwide oriented their lives around. I knelt. Pressed my forehead to the mat. Allah, I whispered. Please. I need you. I need help. I need something. Anything. Please. Silence. I tried again. Louder this time, more desperate. Allah, if you're there, if you hear me, please show me what to do. I'm lost. I'm terrified. I don't know how to. Nothing. The air in the room didn't change. No peace descended. No answer came. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of a car passing on the highway beyond the palace walls. I sat back on my heels, tears streaming down my face. Why won't you answer me? My voice cracked. I prayed to you my entire life. Every day. 5 times a day. I've fasted during Ramadan. I've read the Quran. I've followed every rule, every law, everything I was supposed to do. And now when I actually need you, where are you? The silence was deafening. I thought about the palace mosque, just 3 floors below me, in the east wing. The most beautiful mosque I'd ever seen. Walls lined with verses from the Quran in calligraphy so exquisite it looked like art. Carpets from Persia, thick and soft, deep red and gold. A chandelier that rivaled the one in our dining room, thousands of crystals, millions of dollars. The mihrab, the prayer niche pointing toward Mecca, was inlaid with lapis lazuli and mother-of-pearl, imported from Afghanistan and Indonesia. I'd prayed there countless times. During Ramadan, during Eid, during family gatherings when we'd all line up together, men in front, women behind, and recite the prayers in unison. I'd pressed my forehead to those expensive carpets and whispered my fears, my hopes, my secret dreams. And I had never, not once, felt anything. No presence. No peace. No sense that anyone was listening. I'd always assumed that was normal. That faith wasn't supposed to feel like anything. It was duty. Obligation. Submission. The word Islam itself meant submission. You submitted to Allah's will whether you felt him or not. But now, kneeling on my prayer mat at 1:30 in the morning with 9 hours until my execution, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I didn't know Allah. I'd spent 24 years praying to him, and I had no idea who he was. Was he merciful, like the Quran said? Was he compassionate? Did he love me? Did he even know my name? Or was he just distant? Unreachable? A cosmic dictator who issued commands through a book and expected perfect obedience but offered nothing in return? I thought about the 99 names of Allah I'd memorized as a child. Al-Rahman. Al-Rahim. Al-Malik. The Merciful. The Compassionate. The King. Beautiful names. But they felt like titles, formal, distant, like calling my father His Highness instead of Baba. I'd never heard Allah call me by name. I'd never felt his presence in a room. I'd never experienced anything that made me certain, absolutely certain, that he was real and that he loved me. And now I was supposed to die for him? Supposed to reject Jesus and cling to a God who felt as far away as the stars? I rolled up the prayer mat and shoved it back in my closet. Paced my room like a caged animal. Back and forth. Back and forth. The marble floor was cold beneath my bare feet. The palace was silent except for the sound of my own breathing. Jesus, I whispered. Testing the name. Tasting it. Jesus, are you there? Nothing. Jesus, Sarah said you hear us when we pray. She said you're close to the brokenhearted. She said, my voice broke. She said you love me. Is that true? Because I need to know. I need to know if this is real or if I'm about to destroy my life for a fairy tale. Still nothing. I sank onto my bed, that ridiculous bed with its Egyptian cotton sheets and cashmere blankets, big enough for 4 people even though I always slept alone. I pulled my knees to my chest and wrapped my arms around them, making myself as small as possible. The despair was crushing. Physical. Like a weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I thought about my mother. Would she cry when they told her I'd refused to sign? Or would she just nod, stone-faced, and agree with my father that I'd brought shame on the family? I thought about my sisters, Layla, 17, and Noor, 14. Would they remember me? Or would my name become forbidden in our house, erased from family photos, removed from conversations like I'd never existed? I thought about the $400 million trust fund I'd lose. Money I'd never earned, never deserved, but had always assumed would be there. Money that could have funded my entire life, bought houses, funded charities, given me independence. Gone. I thought about my passport being revoked. My face on watch lists. My father's connections ensuring I could never truly escape. Interpol. Extradition. Diplomatic pressure. He'd meant every word. If I ran, he'd find me. And then what? Would I end up like that Saudi princess in Paris? Found dead in a hotel room, suicide written on the police report, questions that would never be answered? Was Jesus worth dying for? I didn't know. I'd only known about him for 3 months. 3 months of secret meetings with Sarah. 3 months of reading the Bible on my phone late at night, terrified someone would catch me. 3 months of watching YouTube videos of testimonies, Muslims who'd converted, people who'd encountered Jesus, stories that made my heart ache with longing. But 3 months wasn't enough to die for, was it? Except for that moment 2 weeks ago. I'd been reading the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 10. Jesus speaking, I have come that they may have life, and have it to the full. Life to the full. I'd read that verse 5 times, sitting on this same bed, and something inside me had broken open. Because I'd realized, I'd never had life to the full. I'd had wealth to the full. Privilege to the full. Security to the full. But life? Real life, joy, freedom, purpose, love that wasn't conditional on my obedience? I'd never had that. And Jesus was offering it. But was it real? Was he real? Jesus, I whispered into the darkness of my room. If you're real, if this is all real, I need you to show me. Because in 8 hours, I have to make a choice that will cost me everything. And I can't do it alone. I can't. The clock glowed, 2:14 a.m. 7 hours and 46 minutes. I lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling, coffered, hand-painted with geometric Islamic patterns, gold leaf catching the dim light. A ceiling that cost $80,000 to install. A ceiling that felt like a lid on a coffin. I'm surrounded by 200 people in this palace, I whispered. And I've never been more alone. I closed my eyes. And in the darkness, I heard my father's voice, choose wisely. Family traitors don't get second chances. I had prayed in the most beautiful mosque in the kingdom, on carpets worth millions. And Allah felt further away than the moon. I had prayed to Jesus for 2 minutes in a locked bedroom. And I didn't feel him either. Maybe neither of them was real. Maybe I was alone in the universe. Maybe faith was just a coping mechanism humans invented to deal with the terror of existence. Maybe. A knock on my door made me bolt upright. 3 soft knocks. Then Fatima's voice, barely above a whisper, "Your Highness? Are you awake?" I scrambled off the bed, ran to the door. "Fatima? I have something for you," she whispered through the door. "Something that might help. But you must promise, you cannot tell anyone I gave this to you." My heart pounded. "I promise." Something slid under the door. A piece of paper. Folded once. "Read it," Fatima whispered. "And remember, you are not alone. Even when it feels like you are." Footsteps. She was gone. I picked up the paper with shaking hands. Unfolded it. Written in careful English, in Fatima's handwriting, was a verse. "Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Isaiah 41 verse 10. And beneath it, one sentence. He sees you. He knows. And he will not abandon you. I collapsed against the door, clutching the paper to my chest, and sobbed. Because for the first time that night, I didn't feel completely alone. Someone, maybe God, maybe just Fatima, knew what I was facing. And they were telling me not to be afraid. That night, I learned what despair really meant. But I also learned something else. Even in the darkest palace, even in the loneliest prison, even when heaven felt silent, someone was watching. Someone cared. And that small piece of paper was the only hope I had to hold on to. 3 months earlier. I need to take you back to the moment everything started to unravel, or maybe the moment everything started to make sense. I'm still not sure which it was. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October. I remember because Tuesday was my volunteer day at the Dubai International Academy, one of the few activities my father permitted because it was appropriate for a princess to engage in charitable work with children. It made good press. Made our family look compassionate, modern, connected to the community. I didn't do it for the press. I did it because for 3 hours every Tuesday, I got to leave the palace. Got to sit in a classroom with children who didn't care that I was a princess. Got to read stories and help with math homework and pretend I was someone normal. That particular Tuesday, I was helping a 7-year-old British girl named Emma with her reading. She was struggling with a chapter book, getting frustrated, close to tears. I knelt beside her desk, careful to keep my abaya from dragging on the floor, and pointed to the words. "Sound it out," I encouraged. "You can do this." She tried. Failed. Her lower lip trembled. "Hey." I squeezed her hand gently. "It's okay to struggle. That's how we learn. Try again." She took a breath and tried again. This time, she got it. Her whole face lit up. I did it. She threw her arms around my neck, spontaneous and unself-conscious, the way only children can be. And something inside me cracked. When was the last time someone had hugged me like that? Without formality, without agenda, just pure affection? I couldn't remember. You did beautifully, I whispered, blinking back sudden tears. After the session ended, I was gathering my things when a woman approached me. Blonde, early 30s, warm smile. One of the teachers I'd seen around but never spoken to. You're wonderful with the children, she said, her British accent crisp and friendly. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I teach year 5. Amira, I said, then caught myself. Princess Amira, I mean. But just. Amira is fine. She smiled like she understood exactly what that slip meant. Just Amira. I like that. She hesitated, then, I don't suppose you'd want to grab coffee sometime? There's a lovely cafe near here. I'd love to chat, off the record, no cameras, just 2 women talking. Every instinct screamed caution. I didn't know her. She was foreign. Western. My father had warned us about Westerners our entire lives, how they'd try to influence us, corrupt us, pull us away from our values. But something in her eyes was kind. Genuine. And I was so desperately lonely. I'd like that, I heard myself say. We met the following week at a small cafe tucked into a side street in Jumeirah, the kind of place tourists didn't know about, where I could sit in a corner booth wearing large sunglasses and go relatively unnoticed. My security detail waited outside in the car. I'd told them I was meeting a friend. They didn't ask questions. Sarah was already there when I arrived, 2 cappuccinos on the table. I hope you drink coffee, she said as I slid into the booth across from her. I should have asked. I do. I wrapped my hands around the cup, grateful for something to hold. Thank you. We talked for an hour. About everything and nothing. About her life in London before moving to Dubai. About teaching. About books, she loved reading, so did I. About the strange experience of living in a city that felt like a beautiful alien planet. She made me laugh. Actually laugh, not the polite, practiced laugh I used at royal functions, but a real, unguarded sound that surprised me. Can I ask you something? Sarah said as our cups emptied. And please feel free to tell me it's none of my business. I tensed. Okay. Are you happy? The question knocked the air from my lungs. No one had ever asked me that. Not once. Not in 24 years. I have everything, I said carefully. I'm very blessed. That's not what I asked. Her eyes were gentle but penetrating. Are you happy? The silence stretched between us. No, I whispered. I'm not. And then, I don't know why, don't know what possessed me, I started talking. Really talking. About the palace. About the control. About feeling like a bird in a golden cage. About not knowing who I was beneath the title. About the crushing weight of expectations and traditions and rules I didn't choose but had to obey. Sarah listened without interrupting. Without judgment. Without trying to fix it. When I finally stopped, breathless and terrified I'd said too much, she reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Amira, she said quietly. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear me. You are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are not broken. You are a human being who was created for more than performance and perfection. You were created to be loved, really loved, just as you are. Tears blurred my vision. How do you know that? She smiled. Because that's what Jesus says about you. My whole body went rigid. Jesus. Christianity. Forbidden territory. Sarah must have seen my panic because she squeezed my hand. I'm not trying to convert you. I promise. I see you hurting, and I know the one who heals. That's all. I should have left. Should have stood up, walked out, never spoken to her again. Instead I whispered, "Tell me more." Over the next 6 weeks, we met every Tuesday after my volunteer shift. Same cafe. Same corner booth. Same security detail waiting outside, bored and oblivious. Sarah would bring her Bible, worn, highlighted, pages dog-eared from use. And she'd read to me. The first passage she showed me was from Matthew, chapter 11, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That's Jesus speaking, Sarah explained. He's inviting you. Not commanding. Not threatening. Inviting. Come. Rest. You don't have to perform for him. You don't have to earn his love. You just come as you are, and he gives you rest. I'd stared at those words on the page until they blurred. Allah doesn't talk like that, I whispered. I know, love. Sarah's voice was soft. That's the difference. She showed me Ephesians 2 verses 8 to 9, "For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." Wait. I read it again. Not by works? But Islam is all about works. 5 pillars. Prayers, fasting, charity, pilgrimage. You earn paradise by doing enough good deeds to outweigh your bad ones. I know. Sarah nodded. And that's exhausting, isn't it? Always wondering if you've done enough? Always afraid you might fall short? I thought about the scales, the Islamic teaching that on Judgment Day, your good deeds and bad deeds would be weighed. If your good deeds were heavier, you entered paradise. If not. I'm terrified of Judgment Day, I admitted. I've been terrified my whole life. Because how do you know? How do you know if you've done enough? You don't, Sarah said gently. That's the point. Under that system, you can never know. You can never have peace. But Jesus offers something different, certainty. Not because you've earned it, but because he paid for it. He died on the cross to take the punishment for your sins. All of them. Past, present, future. And when you accept that gift, when you trust him, you're saved. Completely. Forever. Not maybe. Not if you're good enough. Just, saved. The concept was so foreign, so radical, it felt like my brain was short-circuiting. But the Quran says Jesus didn't die on the cross, I said. It says Allah made it appear that way, but he actually took Jesus up to heaven before the crucifixion. I know that's what you've been taught. Sarah's voice was patient. But Amira, there's historical evidence, Roman records, Jewish historians, even secular sources, that confirm Jesus was crucified. It's one of the most well-documented events in ancient history. The Quran was written 600 years after Jesus lived. The Gospels were written within decades of his death by people who were there, who saw him die, and then saw him alive again 3 days later. My head was spinning. If Jesus died and rose again, that would make him God. Yes. Sarah's eyes held mine. That's exactly what it would make him. And that's exactly what he claimed to be. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, Sarah's words echoing in my mind. Jesus claimed to be God. In Islam, that was the ultimate blasphemy. Shirk, associating partners with Allah. The unforgivable sin. But what if it was true? What if Jesus really was who he said he was? What if the God of the universe actually came down, became human, walked on earth, died on a cross, and rose from the dead, all to save humanity from sin? What if he did it for me? I pulled out my phone, the one my father would later reveal had been monitored, and opened the browser. Typed, Gospel of John. The entire book appeared on my screen. I started reading. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word. Jesus. God. I kept reading. hour after hour. Chapter after chapter. Jesus healing the sick. Jesus feeding thousands with a few loaves and fish. Jesus forgiving a woman caught in adultery. When the religious leaders wanted to stone her, he said, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone." They all walked away. Then Jesus turned to the woman, "Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." I read that scene 3 times, tears streaming down my face. No condemnation. Just compassion. Just an invitation to change. Allah felt like a judge I'd never satisfy. Jesus felt like a friend I'd never known I needed. I kept reading. And then I hit John 14 verse 6. Jesus speaking. "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." My breath caught. Not one of the ways. Not a prophet among many. The way. The truth. The life. Either Jesus was exactly who he claimed to be, God in flesh, the only path to salvation, or he was a liar or a lunatic. There was no middle ground. No great prophet option. Muhammad said Jesus was just a prophet. Jesus said he was God. They couldn't both be right. I read until dawn. Until my eyes burned and my phone battery dropped to 3%. Until I'd finished the entire Gospel of John and started on Matthew. And somewhere in those verses, something shifted inside me. Not dramatically. Not with thunder and lightning. Just, quietly. Like a door I didn't know existed had cracked open, and light was streaming through. The next Tuesday, I came to the cafe with 100 questions. Sarah answered every single one. Patiently. Thoroughly. Never making me feel stupid for asking. How do I know the Bible hasn't been corrupted? Muslims say it's been changed. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me images of ancient manuscripts, the Dead Sea Scrolls, fragments of the Gospel of John dating to within decades of Jesus' death. We have thousands of manuscripts from the first few centuries after Christ. And they all say the same thing. The Bible is the most well-preserved ancient text in existence. Far more than the Quran, which wasn't even compiled into a single book until after Muhammad died. What about all the violence in the Old Testament? Muslims always point to that. Context matters, Sarah explained. God was establishing a nation, Israel, in a violent ancient world. But even then, the commands were specific, limited, temporary. And then Jesus came and fulfilled the Old Testament law. He said, "You have heard it said, an eye for an eye. But I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you." Jesus didn't come to conquer. He came to save. But Muhammad spread Islam through military conquest, Sarah finished gently. I know. Jesus spread Christianity by dying. That's the difference, Amira. Muhammad took up the sword. Jesus took up the cross. Every answer led to more questions. And every question led me deeper into something I couldn't deny. Jesus was different. Not just different from Muhammad. Different from every religious leader who'd ever lived. He claimed to be God. He proved it by rising from the dead. And he offered something no one else could, complete forgiveness, total acceptance, eternal life, not earned, but given freely to anyone who'd trust him. On our 8th meeting, Sarah slid something across the table. A Bible. Small, leather-bound, English translation. I can't take that, I said immediately, panic rising. If anyone finds it. Hide it, Sarah said. But Amira, you need to read this for yourself. Not just verses I show you. The whole story. Cover to cover. You need to meet Jesus on your own. I stared at the book. The cross embossed on the cover. The pages that held words that could get me killed. I'm scared, I whispered. I know. Sarah covered my hand with hers. But you're also hungry. I see it in you. You're starving for truth. For love. For freedom. And this book, she tapped the Bible, contains the only thing that can satisfy that hunger. Not a religion. Not rules. A relationship. With the one who made you. Who knows you. Who loves you more than you can possibly imagine. I took the Bible. Slid it into my purse, under my wallet, my keys, burying it like contraband. Because that's what it was. Contraband. Illegal. Dangerous. The most dangerous thing I'd ever held in my hands. That night, I locked my bedroom door. Checked the windows. Drew the curtains. And then I pulled the Bible from under my mattress where I'd hidden it and opened to the first page. Genesis. The beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I read for 2 hours. Then 3. Then 4. Every night for the next 3 weeks, I read. Secretly. Fearfully. Hungrily. I read about Adam and Eve in the garden. About Abraham willing to sacrifice his son. About Moses and the Red Sea. About David, the shepherd boy who became a king. And then I reached the Gospels. Matthew. Mark. Luke. John. 4 accounts of the same man. Jesus of Nazareth. Born in a stable. Raised by a carpenter. Baptized in a river. Tempted in the wilderness. Teaching on mountainsides. Healing the broken. Forgiving the guilty. Loving the unlovable. And then, betrayed. Arrested. Beaten. Mocked. Crucified. I read the crucifixion scene in Matthew, chapter 27, and I sobbed into my pillow so no one would hear. They stripped him. Beat him. Forced a crown of thorns onto his head. Nailed him to a cross. And he hung there for 6 hours, dying, while people mocked him. He saved others, but he can't save himself. But he could have. That was the point. He was God. He could have called down armies of angels. Could have destroyed everyone who hurt him. Instead, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Forgive them. While they were killing him. I'd never read anything like that in the Quran. Muhammad had enemies killed. Moses called down plagues. But Jesus? Jesus forgave. And then he died. And then, 3 days later, he rose. I read the resurrection accounts over and over. The empty tomb. The appearances. The disciples who'd abandoned him in fear suddenly transformed into bold witnesses willing to die for the truth. Jesus is alive. And sitting there at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday night, or Wednesday morning, technically, with that forbidden Bible open on my lap, I knew. I knew it was true. All of it. Jesus was real. The cross was real. The resurrection was real. And I was in serious, serious trouble. Because I didn't just believe it intellectually. I felt it. Deep in my soul. In places I didn't know existed. This was the truth I'd been searching for my entire life. This was the love I'd been starving for. This was the freedom I'd been dying for. And it was going to cost me everything. 2 nights later, I knelt on that $250,000 Persian rug, pulled the Bible out from under my mattress, and whispered the most dangerous prayer of my life. Jesus. I don't know how to do this. I don't know the right words. But if you're real, if you really are who this book says you are, I need you. I'm tired of pretending. Tired of performing. Tired of trying to earn love from a God who feels like he's a million miles away. So. I'm choosing you. I don't know what happens next. But I'm yours. Please, save me. Nothing dramatic happened. No lightning. No audible voice. No vision. Just peace. Quiet, unexplainable peace settling over me like a blanket. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd come home. I didn't tell Sarah right away. Didn't tell anyone. I just kept reading. Kept praying. kept learning. And every day, Jesus felt more real. More present. More mine. Until 6 weeks later, when my brother followed me to that cafe, took photos, and delivered them to my father. And the golden cage I'd been living in became a tomb. But here's what I learned in chapter 4 of my story. The truth will set you free. Even when freedom costs you everything. Even when the book that holds that truth is forbidden. Even when reading it in your palace bedroom at midnight feels like high treason. Because some treasures are worth any price. And Jesus was the treasure I didn't know I'd been searching for all along. It was 3:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I was staring at the clock on my nightstand, watching the minutes crawl toward 9 a.m., toward the moment I'd have to walk into my father's office and choose between my family and Jesus. Between everything I'd ever known and everything I'd just discovered. 4 hours remained. 240 minutes. 14,400 seconds. I'd been lying in bed for the past hour after reading Fatima's note, clutching that piece of paper with Isaiah 41 verse 10 written on it like it was a lifeline. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. The words were beautiful. Comforting. But I was still terrified. My room was dark except for the ambient glow of the city through my windows. Dubai never truly slept, never went completely dark. The Burj Khalifa's lights painted patterns on my ceiling. I could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of a jet taking off from the airport, the footsteps of security guards patrolling the hallways below. Everything normal. Everything the same. But I was being crushed under the weight of an impossible choice. Jesus, I whispered into the darkness. I meant what I said 2 weeks ago. I chose you. I gave you my life. But I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to lose everything. I'm not that strong. I'm not that brave. I'm just scared. The air conditioning hummed. The city glowed. The clock ticked. 3:18 a.m. Please, I whispered, tears streaming down my face into my pillow. If you're real, if this is all real, I need you to show me. Not just words in a book. Not just feelings. I need to know. Because in less than 4 hours, my father is going to ask me to deny you. And if I don't, I'm going to lose everything. My family. My home. My identity. Maybe my life. So please. Please. I need you right now. I need. The air changed. I don't know how else to describe it. The atmosphere in my room suddenly felt different. Thicker. Warmer. Like the space itself was holding its breath. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. The temperature hadn't actually changed, the air conditioning was still running, but I felt warmth. Not physical heat. Something else. Something that made every hair on my arm stand up, made my skin tingle, made my breath catch in my throat. And then I saw him. Standing by my window, silhouetted against the glow of the city lights, was a figure. A man. Every logical part of my brain screamed that this was impossible. My door was locked from the outside. My windows didn't open. There was no way anyone could have entered my room. I should have been terrified, a strange man in my bedroom at 3 a.m. But I wasn't afraid. Because somehow, impossibly, I knew exactly who he was. Jesus, I breathed. He stepped forward, out of the shadows, and I saw him clearly. He wasn't glowing. He wasn't floating. He wasn't transparent like a ghost. He looked solid. Real. Physical. Like he could reach out and touch me if he wanted to. His clothing was simple, a white robe, undyed linen, like something from ancient times. No jewelry. No crown. Nothing to indicate wealth or status. He looked like a poor man from first-century Israel. But there was nothing poor about his presence. I'd been around royalty my entire life. Kings, princes, emirs, sultans. Men who commanded nations, who signed laws, who controlled billions of dollars. Men who walked into rooms and everyone stood. Men whose very presence demanded respect. Jesus made them all look like children playing dress-up. He radiated authority. Not the kind that comes from titles or weapons or money. Something deeper. Something fundamental. The kind of authority that exists because it simply is, like gravity, like the sun, like the ocean. Undeniable. Unquestionable. Absolute. But his eyes. His eyes were what broke me. I'd expected them to be stern. Judging. After all, I was a Muslim princess who'd lived in luxury while millions suffered. I'd wasted money on clothes I'd worn once. I'd ignored the poor outside the palace gates. I'd lived in selfishness and vanity for 24 years. But when Jesus looked at me, when his eyes met mine, there was no condemnation. Only love. Pure, infinite, overwhelming love. Love that saw everything. Every sin. Every failure. Every moment of selfishness and pride and fear. Every time I'd chosen comfort over courage. Every time I'd bowed to idols, not stone idols, but idols of approval, security, wealth. He saw all of it. And he loved me anyway. Amira, he said. Just my name. Not your highness. Not princess. Just Amira. And the way he said it, like he'd known me before I was born, like he'd been calling my name my entire life, and this was the first time I'd actually heard him, shattered something inside me. I tried to get out of bed, to kneel, to bow. How do you respond when God himself is standing in your bedroom? But my legs wouldn't work. I was trembling so hard I couldn't stand. Jesus walked closer. Stood at the foot of my bed. You called for me, he said. His voice was gentle. Warm. Like a friend. And I am here. I don't, words failed. My brain couldn't process what was happening. Are you really? I am, he said simply. I am. The words hit me like a shockwave. I am. The name God gave Moses at the burning bush. I am who I am. Not I was or I will be, but present tense. Eternal. Existing outside of time. Jesus was claiming to be Yahweh. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The God who'd led Israel out of Egypt. The creator of the universe. Standing in my bedroom at 3:20 a.m. Why? The word came out as a sob. Why are you here? Why do you care about me? I'm nobody. I'm just a girl who lives in a palace and pretends to have purpose. I haven't done anything for you. I've barely known you 3 months. Why would you? Because I love you, Jesus said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I've always loved you. Before the palace. Before the title. Before you knew my name. I formed you in your mother's womb. I knit you together. Every fiber of your being, every thought, every dream, I designed you. You are mine, Amira. You always have been. Tears were pouring down my face now. Unstoppable. Years of loneliness, fear, emptiness, all of it breaking open like a dam. I'm so scared, I whispered. In a few hours, my father is going to ask me to deny you. And if I don't, I'm going to lose everything. My family. My home. My inheritance. Maybe my life. I want to be brave. I want to stand for you. But I'm terrified. What if I'm not strong enough? Jesus's expression softened even more, if that were possible. He moved closer, sat on the edge of my bed like this was the most natural thing in the world. Like he was just a friend visiting. Except he wasn't just a friend. He was God. And he was sitting on my bed. Amira, he said, his voice impossibly gentle. Strength doesn't come from you. It comes from me. You're not supposed to be strong enough on your own. That's the point. When you're weak, I am strong. When you can't stand, I carry you. But how? My voice cracked. How do I walk into my Father's office in 4 hours and choose you when it means losing everything? Jesus reached out, and I flinched slightly, not from fear but from awe, and took my hand in his. His hand was warm. Solid. Real. And then I saw them. The scars. In the center of his palm, a thick, round scar. From a nail. From the crucifixion. I stared at that scar, at the mark of the most brutal torture method the Roman Empire had ever devised, and something clicked in my mind. You know, I whispered. You know what it's like to lose everything. Jesus nodded slowly. I left heaven, perfect, glorious, eternal heaven, to come to earth. I was born in a stable. Raised by a carpenter. I owned nothing. No home. No money. No political power. My own people rejected me. My religious leaders hated me. My disciples abandoned me when I needed them most. He turned his hand over, showing me the scar on the other side where the nail had gone through. And then I was arrested. Beaten. Mocked. Stripped naked. Nailed to a cross. I hung there for 6 hours, Amira. In agony. Alone. Separated from my Father for the first time in eternity. Why? Because I loved you. Because I chose you. Because I knew that 2,000 years later, a princess in a palace would need to know that I understand loss. I understand sacrifice. I understand what it costs to choose love over safety. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't speak. You're asking me how you'll walk into your Father's office and choose me, Jesus continued. But Amira, I walked to Calvary and chose you. I carried a cross up a hill, let them drive nails through my hands and feet, and hung there dying, for you. So when you stand before your earthly father and confess my name, you won't be alone. I will be standing with you. The same power that raised me from the dead will strengthen you. You will have everything you need. Not because you're brave. Because I am faithful. My entire body was shaking. What if they kill me? Jesus' eyes held mine. Then you'll wake up in paradise with me. And every tear, every fear, every moment of suffering will be worth it. But Amira, his voice grew firmer. Your father doesn't have the power he thinks he does. He can take your money. He can take your title. He can remove your name from documents. But he cannot touch your soul. He cannot separate you from my love. He cannot steal your eternal inheritance. All he can do is free you from a prison you didn't even realize you were in. But my family. I am your family now, Jesus said gently. Every person who follows me is your brother, your sister. You're not losing family, Amira. You're gaining millions of siblings all over the world. Some of them will help you. Protect you. Love you in ways your earthly family never could. Because they love me, and you are mine. He stood, still holding my hand, and gently pulled me to my feet. We stood facing each other. The God of the universe and a terrified princess in a palace bedroom. I need you to understand something, Jesus said, his voice carrying a weight that made the air vibrate. When you walk into that office tomorrow, today, and confess my name, you're not just making a personal choice. You're striking a blow against darkness. Against the powers that have held your family, your nation, your region in spiritual bondage for centuries. You're declaring that there is another king. Another kingdom. Another way. And the enemy will fight back. He'll use your father, your family, every weapon he has. But he's already lost. I defeated him on the cross. I rose from the grave. And nothing, nothing, can snatch you out of my hand. I don't feel victorious, I whispered. I feel weak. Good. Jesus smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. Because that's when I do my best work. When you're at the end of yourself, I'm just getting started. He released my hand and stepped back toward the window. Wait. I lurched forward. Don't go. Please. You need to trust me, Jesus said. And you will. When your father asks you to sign that paper, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember my scars. You'll remember that I chose you before you chose me. And you'll find words you didn't know you had. Courage you didn't know existed. Peace that makes no sense. Because I will be with you. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. The light from the city seemed to grow brighter behind him, or maybe he was causing it, I couldn't tell. His form began to fade, not disappearing but becoming translucent, like he was made of light. Jesus. My voice was desperate. How will I know what to say? His voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The Holy Spirit will give you the words. Just open your mouth. And trust me. And then he was gone. The room returned to normal. The air conditioning hummed. The clock read 3:34 a.m. 17 minutes had passed, though it felt like both seconds and hours. I stood in the middle of my bedroom, staring at the space where he'd been, wondering if I'd hallucinated the whole thing. If stress and fear had finally broken my mind. But then I looked down at my hand, the one he'd held, and saw something that made my heart stop. A warmth. A tingling. And the faintest glow, fading even as I watched it. He'd been here. Really here. God had entered my palace bedroom. Had sat on my bed. Had held my hand. Had spoken my name. And everything had changed. I didn't go back to bed. I couldn't. I knelt on the floor, on that Persian rug worth $250,000, and I worshipped. Not with elegant words. Not with memorized prayers. Just with tears and whispered thank yous and a heart that finally understood what it meant to be loved. Around 5 a.m., I stood and walked to my closet. Opened the doors. Looked at the 47 designer abayas hanging there like trophies of a life I didn't want anymore. I pulled out the simplest one. Black. No embroidery. No crystals. Nothing flashy. I dressed slowly. Carefully. Put on my hijab, pinned it exactly the way my mother had taught me years ago. Then I walked to my desk and pulled out a piece of paper. Wrote 3 letters. One to my mother. One to my sisters. One to my brothers. In each one, I explained. Not defending. Not arguing. Just telling the truth, I'd met Jesus. He was real. He loved me. And I loved him more than I loved my own life. If you never understand, I hope someday you'll forgive me. But I can't deny him. He's worth everything I'm about to lose. I sealed the letters in envelopes. Left them on my desk. Then I sat in the chair by my window and watched the sun rise over Dubai. The city turned from dark to gray to gold. The call to prayer echoed from the palace mosque, the same call I'd heard every morning for 24 years. But this morning, it sounded different. Not sacred. Just empty. Because I'd heard a different voice. A voice that knew my name. A voice that had called me beloved. And that voice had changed everything. At 8:45 a.m., there was a knock on my door. Your Highness, Ahmed's voice called. His Highness is expecting you. I stood. Smoothed my abaya. Took one last look at my bedroom, the gold fixtures, the silk curtains, the marble floors, the view of a city my family had built. Goodbye, I whispered to the palace. To the life I'd known. To the princess I'd been. Then I opened the door. And walked toward my father's office with Jesus's words ringing in my ears. I will be with you. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I'd been in the presence of true royalty. And compared to him, my earthly father's throne looked like a toy. The walk to my father's office felt like walking to my own execution. Ahmed and Saeed flanked me, same as the night before, same heavy silence. But this time, something was different. I was different. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I should have been terrified, should have been calculating escape routes or rehearsing arguments or bargaining with God for a way out. Instead, I felt calm. Not a natural calm. Not the kind that comes from confidence in yourself. This was something else entirely, a supernatural peace that made absolutely no sense given the circumstances. It was like standing in the eye of a hurricane, watching the storm rage around you but feeling completely protected in the center. Jesus had said the Holy Spirit would give me words. I was about to find out if that was true. We passed through the same hallways. The same portrait gallery, my ancestors staring down with their judgmental eyes. The same carved teak doors. But this time, when Ahmed knocked 3 times, I wasn't the terrified girl who'd entered last night. I was a daughter of the king. Not the emir. The real king. Enter, my father's voice commanded. The doors opened. My father sat behind his desk in exactly the same position as the night before, reading glasses on, iPad in hand, projecting absolute control. But this time, he wasn't alone. My mother sat in a chair to his right. Her face was composed, elegant as always, but I could see the tension in her jaw. She wore a cream-colored abaya, Chanel, I recognized it, and her hijab was pinned with a diamond brooch worth more than most cars. My eldest brother Khalid stood near the window. Arms crossed. Expression hard. He was dressed in traditional Emirati white kandura and gutra, looking every inch the crown prince he was being groomed to become. And near the door, standing so still he almost blended into the wall, was Hassan, our head of security. 50 years old. Former military. Loyal to my father with the kind of loyalty that didn't ask questions. This wasn't a private conversation. This was a tribunal. Sit, Amira, my father said, gesturing to the same uncomfortable chair. I sat. Folded my hands in my lap. And waited. My father removed his glasses with excruciating slowness. Set them down. Aligned them perfectly parallel to the edge of his desk, because even in moments like this, he needed to demonstrate control over every detail. I assume you've spent the night considering your options, he said. His voice was neutral. Businesslike. Like we were discussing a merger, not my life. I assume you've realized the magnitude of what you're throwing away if you persist in this foolishness. I said nothing. Just held his gaze. His eyes narrowed slightly. The document is ready. He slid the same papers across the desk, the renunciation, the public confession, the declaration that I'd been momentarily confused by Western influences. Sign it. This ends now. And we never speak of it again. I looked down at the paper. At the blank line waiting for my signature. At the golden pen resting beside it, the same pen he'd held the night before like a weapon. My mother leaned forward slightly. Amira. Her voice was softer than my father's, but no less firm. Please. Think about what you're doing. You're our daughter. We love you. But you're forcing us to choose between you and our family's honor. Don't make us do that. You have everything here, Khalid added from the window. His voice was harder, angrier. Do you know what people would give to have what you have? And you're going to throw it away for what? A foreign religion? A dead man the Christians worship? Have you lost your mind? He's not dead, I said quietly. The room went silent. My father's expression darkened. Excuse me? I lifted my eyes to meet his. Jesus. He's not dead. He rose from the grave. He's alive. And he's more real than anything in this room. My mother gasped. Khalid swore under his breath. Hassan's hand moved slightly toward his belt, where I knew he kept a weapon. My father's face remained impassive, but his hands tightened on the armrests of his chair. You will not blaspheme in my presence. I'm not blaspheming, I said, and the words were coming now, flowing from somewhere beyond myself, just like Jesus had promised. I'm telling you the truth. For 24 years, I've lived in this palace. I've had everything money can buy. I've prayed 5 times a day. I've fasted during Ramadan. I've followed every rule. And I've been empty. Completely empty. Islam gave me rituals. It gave me fear. It gave me uncertainty about whether I'd ever done enough to earn paradise. But it never gave me peace. It never gave me love. It never gave me him. Stop. My father's voice was low. Dangerous. Stop this right now. But I couldn't stop. The words were pouring out like water from a broken dam. Jesus found me, Baba. When I was at my lowest. When I was ready to give up. When I felt like I was drowning in this golden cage. He found me. And he showed me what real love looks like. Not conditional love, I'll love you if you obey, if you perform, if you bring honor to the family. Just, love. I love you because you're mine, love. I died for you, love. Tears were streaming down my face now. He died on a cross, Baba. He was tortured and killed so that I could be forgiven. So that I could have eternal life. Not because I earned it. Because he loves me. Enough. My father slammed his hand on the desk. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. I will not sit here and listen to you preach Christianity in my office. You are a Muslim. You were born a Muslim. You will die a Muslim. That is not negotiable. Then I'll die, I whispered. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother made a choking sound. Khalid turned from the window, his face pale. Hassan stepped forward slightly, awaiting orders. My father stared at me like I was a stranger. What did you say? I stood. My legs were steady. My voice was clear. I said I'll die. If that's the choice, renounce Jesus or die, then I choose death. Because he's worth it. He's worth more than this palace. More than the money. More than the title. More than my own life. You're insane, Khalid hissed. This is insanity. Sit down, Amira, my mother pleaded, tears in her eyes now. Please. You don't mean this. You're confused. We'll get you help. Therapy. We'll. I'm not confused, Ummi. I looked at my mother, the woman who'd raised me, taught me, shaped me into a perfect princess. I'm seeing clearly for the first time in my life. And I can't unsee it. I can't go back to pretending. My father stood slowly. Rose from his throne-like chair with all the terrible authority of a man who'd never been defied. Never been told no. Never had his will questioned in his own palace. Hassan, he said quietly. Lock the doors. Hassan moved immediately. The heavy teak doors swung shut with a sound like a tomb ceiling. A lock clicked. My heart hammered. But underneath the fear, that supernatural peace remained. My father walked around his desk. Stood directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the anger burning in his eyes. For the last time, Amira, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I am giving you a choice. Renounce this Jesus. Sign this paper. Beg Allah's forgiveness. And you remain my daughter. You keep your title. Your inheritance. Your family. Your life. He paused. Or refuse. And you are dead to me. To all of us. We will erase you from family records. You will be forbidden from ever contacting your sisters. Your brothers. Your mother. You will leave this palace with nothing. And Amira, his eyes bored into mine, if you think you'll run to the west and live happily ever after, you're mistaken. I have connections. Power. Resources. We will find you. And we will bring you back to face justice under Sharia law. The penalty for apostasy is death. You know this. I did know this. Every Muslim knew this. Leave Islam and you forfeit your life. I looked at my father. At the man who'd taught me to ride horses when I was 6. Who'd bought me my first abaya when I turned 13. Who'd smiled, actually smiled, at my high school graduation. That man was gone. Or maybe he'd never existed. Maybe this had always been lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the moment I stepped out of line. I love you, Baba, I said, my voice breaking. I will always love you. You're my father. But Jesus is my Lord. And I can't deny him. Even for you. Something flickered in my father's eyes. Pain? Rage? I couldn't tell. Then his face hardened into a mask. Hassan, he said, not breaking eye contact with me. Bring it. Hassan moved to a cabinet on the far wall. Opened it. And pulled out something that made my blood run cold. A sword. Not decorative. Not ceremonial. A real sword, curved, gleaming, razor-sharp. The kind used for executions in our region. The kind that had beheaded criminals, adulterers, apostates. Hassan carried it to my father and placed it in his hands. My mother stood, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Abdullah, no. Please. She's our daughter. You can't. Sit down, my father commanded without looking at her. My mother sat. Khalid stared at the floor, his jaw clenched. My father held the sword. Felt its weight. Ran his finger along the blade. Then he looked at me. Kneel, he said. Time seemed to slow down. The room felt both infinitely large and crushingly small. This was it. This was the moment Jesus had warned me about. The moment that would cost me everything. I thought about running. The doors were locked, but maybe I could fight, scream, break a window. Trust me. Jesus' voice. Not audible. But clear as day in my mind. I am with you. I will never leave you. I took a breath. And I knelt. The marble floor was cold beneath my knees. I straightened my spine. Lifted my chin. If I was going to die, I'd die looking at heaven, not at the floor. My father stepped behind me. I could feel him there, the weight of his presence, the terrible authority he wielded. Last chance, Amira, he said. His voice was shaking now. Just slightly. Say the words. I renounce Jesus Christ. I return to Islam. Say them, and this ends. I closed my eyes. And I saw him. Jesus. Standing in my bedroom just hours ago. Showing me his scars. Promising he'd never leave me. I opened my eyes. Jesus Christ is Lord, I said clearly. Loudly. So everyone in the room could hear. He is the Son of God. He died for my sins. He rose from the dead. And he is my Savior. I will not deny him. Not for you. Not for anyone. Not even to save my own life. My father raised the sword. I heard my mother sob. I braced myself. Said one final prayer, Jesus, receive my spirit. The sword swung down. And stopped. Midair. Frozen. Like an invisible hand had caught it. My father grunted, straining, trying to complete the motion. But the sword wouldn't move. It was stuck in place like it had hit a wall. What? My father's face went white. He pulled at the sword. Pushed. Nothing. It wouldn't budge. Then, impossibly, it was wrenched from his hands by an unseen force. The sword flew across the room and clattered against the wall. Everyone stared. My father stumbled backward, staring at his empty hands like they'd betrayed him. What is this? He whispered. What sorcery? The temperature in the room dropped. Not metaphorically. Actually dropped. I could see my breath misting in the air. And then the light changed. The normal morning sunlight streaming through the windows brightened, intensified, until it was almost blinding. But it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from behind me. I turned. And there he was. Jesus. Standing in the center of the room. Visible. Solid. Real. Not to me alone this time. Everyone could see him. My mother screamed. Khalid dropped to his knees. Hassan backed against the wall, his face gray with terror. My father stood frozen, his mouth open, staring at the figure radiating light and power and absolute authority. Jesus looked exactly as he had in my bedroom. Simple white robe. Carpenter's hands. But his presence filled the entire office, filled it the way the ocean fills a cup. Overwhelming. Undeniable. Amira, he said gently. Stand. I stood on trembling legs. Jesus looked at my father. And when he spoke, his voice wasn't angry. It was sad. Abdullah, he said. My father's name. You were about to kill your own daughter for speaking my name. Do you understand what you've just done? My father couldn't speak. Couldn't move. He just stared. I am Jesus, the Christ, Jesus continued. The one this girl confessed. The one you tried to force her to deny. And I am here to tell you, you have no power over her. She belongs to me. She is marked with my seal. And no sword, no weapon, no lie you create can separate her from my love. He turned to look at each person in the room. I died for all of you, he said quietly. Not just Amira. Every person in this room. Every person in this palace. Every person in this nation. I bled. I suffered. I rose from the dead, so that you could be forgiven. So that you could know the Father. So that you could have eternal life. His eyes met my father's again. And you repay that love by threatening to kill those who accept it? My father's knees buckled. He collapsed into his chair, his face ashen. This is impossible, Khalid whispered from the floor. This can't be real. It is real, Jesus said, looking at him. As real as the air you breathe. As real as the ground beneath you. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I am giving all of you the same choice I gave Amira, trust me, or continue in darkness. But know this, his voice grew firmer, if you harm her, you will answer to me. He looked back at me. Smiled. And I felt that same overwhelming love I'd felt in my bedroom. Go, Amira, he said. My people are waiting for you. You are not alone. You never will be. And then, just as suddenly as he'd appeared, he was gone. The light faded. The temperature returned to normal. The room was silent except for the sound of my mother weeping and Hassan's ragged breathing. I stood in the center of the office, shaking from head to toe, barely able to process what had just happened. My father stared at the space where Jesus had been. His hands were trembling. His face had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Go, he whispered. I blinked. What? Go. He wouldn't look at me. Take what you can carry. You have 1 hour. Hassan will escort you to the gates. And then, his voice cracked. Then you are no longer my daughter. My mother sobbed harder. Khalid still knelt on the floor, staring at nothing. I wanted to say something. Wanted to beg them to understand. Wanted to tell them they could have this too, this peace, this love, this Jesus who'd just saved my life. But I could see in their faces, they weren't ready. Not yet. Maybe someday. So I did the only thing I could do. I walked to the door. Hassan unlocked it with shaking hands. And I left my father's office for the last time. As I walked through the palace hallways, past the portraits, past the gold and marble and crystal, I realized something. I'd just witnessed a miracle. Jesus had physically appeared in a locked room. Had stopped a sword mid-swing. Had revealed himself to people who didn't believe in him. Not for his sake. For mine. Because I was his. And he protected what was his. I'd lost my earthly father. But I'd gained a heavenly father who would literally move heaven and earth to save me. And that was worth more than any palace. I had 1 hour. 60 minutes to pack a life. To gather whatever I could carry from 24 years of existence. To say goodbye to the only home I'd ever known. Hassan walked behind me through the palace hallways, not as a guard anymore, but as a witness. His face was still pale, his hands still shaking slightly. He'd seen Jesus. Actually seen him. And I could tell from the way he kept glancing at me, then looking away quickly, that he didn't know how to process what had just happened. Neither did I. My legs felt like they were moving on autopilot. Left foot, right foot, past the formal reception rooms, past the family wing, past the portraits of ancestors who would now pretend I'd never existed. The palace felt different somehow. Smaller. Less impressive. Like seeing behind the curtain of a magic trick and realizing it was all just smoke and mirrors. We reached my bedroom. Hassan stood at the door. I'll wait here, he stopped himself. I wasn't your highness anymore. I'll wait here. I nodded and stepped inside. My room looked exactly as I'd left it 2 hours ago. The bed I'd knelt beside when Jesus appeared. The window where he'd stood. The Persian rug where I'd worshipped. The desk where I'd written letters to my family. The letters. I grabbed them quickly, held them in my hands. Should I still leave them? Or would they just cause more pain? Leave them, I felt in my spirit. They need to hear the truth. Even if they're not ready now. I placed them back on the desk. Spread them out so they couldn't be missed. Then I turned to my closet. 47 designer abayas. Hermes scarves. Shoes worth thousands of dollars each. Jewelry in velvet boxes, diamonds, emeralds, sapphires, gifts from my father for birthdays and holidays. I grabbed the smallest suitcase I owned, a Rimmel carry-on that had cost $1,500 but that I'd only used twice. Opened it on my bed. What do you pack when you're leaving forever? I stood there, paralyzed, staring at all my possessions. And then I heard his voice again, quiet but clear. You don't need any of this. Trust me. I took a deep breath. Practical items first. I grabbed my passport. They hadn't confiscated it yet, though I was certain it would be flagged at every border within hours. Some clothes, the simplest abayas, a few hijabs, undergarments. My phone and charger. A few photographs from my childhood, me with my sisters, before everything got complicated. Then I went to my mattress. Lifted it. And pulled out the Bible Sarah had given me. Worn now from weeks of reading. Pages marked with notes in the margins. Verses highlighted in yellow. This small book that had cost me everything and given me everything. I placed it carefully on top of my clothes. What else? My eyes landed on my jewelry box. Millions of dollars worth of gems. My inheritance, technically, though my father was about to revoke all of that. I opened it. Looked at the diamonds sparkling in the morning light. And I felt nothing. No attachment. No regret. They were just stones. Pretty, expensive, worthless stones. I closed the box. But then I saw something else. Tucked in my desk drawer. A small photograph in a silver frame, me and Fatima, taken 3 years ago during Eid. She'd been working for our family for nearly 2 decades by then. In the photo, we were both smiling. She'd just finished helping me dress for the celebration, and I'd insisted we take a picture together. Your family, I'd told her. She'd cried. I picked up the photograph. Stared at her kind face. Fatima. The Filipino maid who'd slipped Isaiah 41 verse 10 under my door last night. Who'd risked her job, maybe her life, to encourage me. Where was she now? Did she know what had happened? Would she be punished for helping me? I had to find her. I left my suitcase and walked to the door. Hassan was still standing there, staring at the marble floor. Hassan, I said quietly. Where's Fatima? He looked up, surprised. The housemaid? Yes. I need to see her. Please. Something in my voice must have convinced him, because he nodded. She's probably in the servants' wing. I'll take you. We walked through parts of the palace I rarely visited, the service corridors, the narrow hallways where the staff moved invisibly, keeping the royal machine running. The contrast was stark. No marble here. No gold. Just plain tiles and fluorescent lights and the smell of cleaning supplies. We found Fatima in the laundry room, folding sheets. When she saw me, her eyes widened. Then filled with tears. Your Highness. Just a mirror, I said, my voice breaking. I'm not a princess anymore. She understood immediately. Dropped the sheet she was holding and pulled me into her arms. This tiny Filipino woman, barely 5 feet tall, who earned maybe $400 a month, holding a former princess while I sobbed into her shoulder. You did it, she whispered. You chose him. How did you know? I pulled back, looking at her. How did you know about Jesus? You never told me you were Christian. Yes. She smiled through her tears. For 15 years. But I had to hide it. If your father found out, he'd deport me. Send me back to Manila. I have 3 children there who depend on my salary. So I prayed in secret. Read my Bible at night when everyone slept. And I prayed for this family. For you. She cupped my face in her work-worn hands. Every day, I prayed that someone in this palace would find Jesus. And he answered. He chose you. I'm leaving, I whispered. They're making me leave. And Fatima, I'm scared. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I have no money, no. Shoo, she pressed something into my hand. Paper. I looked down. Money. A thick stack of bills, dirhams, maybe 5,000 worth. Maybe $1,400. Fatima, no, I can't. You can. You will. Her voice was firm. This is everything I've saved for 3 years. I was going to use it to bring my children here for Christmas. But Jesus is telling me to give it to you. You need it more than I do right now. But your children. Jesus will provide for my children. She smiled. He always does. And sister, she gripped my shoulders, you are my sister now. In Christ. We're family. And family takes care of each other. I was crying so hard I could barely see. I don't deserve this. None of us deserve what Jesus did for us on the cross. She wiped my tears with her thumb. But he did it anyway. That's grace. Now listen to me carefully. There's a church, secret, underground. In Dara. They meet in a warehouse disguised as a shipping company. Pastor Michael runs it. He helps people like you. People who've converted. People who need to escape. She pressed another piece of paper into my hand, an address written in her careful handwriting. Go there. Tonight. Tell them Fatima sent you. They'll help you get out of the country. How do you know all this? She smiled sadly. Because I've helped 3 other people escape. 2 housemates from Saudi families. 1 driver from a Kuwaiti prince. All of them found Jesus. All of them needed to run. The underground church in the Gulf is small, but it's real. And we protect each other. Hassan cleared his throat behind me. We need to go. Time's almost up. Fatima hugged me one more time. Go with God, sister. You're not alone. You never will be. 20 minutes later, I stood at the palace gates with 1 small suitcase, $1,400 in cash, a disabled credit card, my father had already frozen my accounts, and a Bible. Everything else was gone. The title. The money. The family. The 2,000 square foot bedroom. The designer clothes. The security. The identity I'd worn like armor for 24 years. All of it. Gone. Hassan had driven me to the gates in a palace vehicle, a Mercedes that cost more than most people earned in 5 years. We sat in silence the entire drive. Now he opened the door for me one last time. Helped me out. Set my suitcase on the ground. I saw him, he said suddenly. His voice was rough. In that office. I saw. Him. Jesus. I looked at him. I know. Is he? Hassan's hands were shaking again. Is he really? The Son of God? Yes. I touched his arm gently. He's real, Hassan. Everything he said is true. And he loves you. Even after everything you've done for my father. Even after you carried that sword. He loves you. And he's giving you the same choice he gave me. Hassan's jaw worked. He looked like he wanted to say something more. But then he just nodded. Walked back to the car. And drove away. I stood alone on the street outside the palace gates. For the first time in my life, I was truly alone. No security detail. No driver. No servants. No family. Just me, a suitcase, and Jesus. The palace loomed behind me, golden, glittering, magnificent. A prison I'd been released from. I turned my back on it. And started walking. I'd never taken public transportation in my life. Never walked down a street without security. Never carried my own luggage. Never navigated a city alone. But somehow, I figured it out. I found a taxi. The driver, a Pakistani man with kind eyes, loaded my suitcase. Where to, sister? I gave him the address Fatima had written down. Dara. The old part of Dubai, away from the skyscrapers and luxury hotels, where workers and immigrants lived in crowded apartments and life was harder but somehow more real. He drove. I watched the city pass by the window. The same city I'd lived in all my life, but I was seeing it as a stranger now. From the outside instead of the inside. It took 40 minutes. When we arrived, the driver helped me with my suitcase. I tried to pay him from Fatima's money. He pushed it back. No charge, sister. You look like you're running from something. I've been there. Allah, he stopped. Looked at me more carefully. Or maybe not Allah. Maybe someone else? I smiled through tears. Someone else. He nodded slowly. Be safe. And may God protect you. He drove away. I stood outside a warehouse that looked exactly like what Fatima had described, rusty metal walls, faded sign reading Al Baraka Shipping and Logistics, nothing that would make you look twice. But there was a small cross. Scratched into the metal near the door. So small you'd miss it if you weren't looking. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. The door cracked open. A man peered out, Filipino, middle-aged, suspicious. We're closed. Fatima sent me, I whispered. His eyes widened. He looked me up and down, took in the expensive abaya, the designer suitcase, the obvious markers of wealth. You're her, he breathed. The princess. She called. Said you might come. Quickly, inside. He pulled me into the warehouse and shut the door behind me. Inside, it looked nothing like a shipping company. There were chairs arranged in rows. A simple wooden cross on the wall. A table with bread and wine, communion elements. And people. Maybe 30 of them. Filipino, Indian, African, Arab. Workers, maids, laborers. Some in traditional clothing, others in Western dress. All of them Christians. All of them hiding. Everyone, the man called out. This is Amira. She's one of us now. They turned to look at me. And instead of bowing, instead of calling me Your Highness, instead of treating me like I was above them, they smiled. Stood. Applauded. A woman rushed forward, Ethiopian, maybe 60 years old, her face lined with years of hard work, and embraced me like I was her own daughter. Welcome, sister, she said. Welcome home. And I realized, this was my family now. Not royal blood. Not titles and palaces. Just believers. Brothers and sisters in Christ. People who knew the same Jesus I knew. Who'd given up the same things, or more, to follow him. I was home. Pastor Michael, the Filipino man who'd answered the door, took me to a back room. Small office. Desk covered with papers, maps, documents. Sit, he said gently. Tell me what happened. I told him everything. The confrontation with my father. The sword. Jesus appearing in the room. The miracle. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, there were tears in his eyes. Jesus showed up physically, he whispered. He appeared to your father? To your family? I nodded. He shook his head in wonder. This is incredible. God is moving. Really moving. If he appeared in the Emir's palace, if he stopped that sword, he looked at me intently. Amira, you're going to need to leave the country. Tonight. Your father will have every airport, every border flagged. But we have connections. People who can help. How? We've done this before. Many times. There's a network, Christian workers, diplomats, business people, who help believers escape persecution. We call it the New Underground Railroad. He pulled out a map. There's a cargo ship leaving from Jebel Ali port at midnight. It's going to Oman, then India. The captain is a believer. He'll take you. No questions. No passenger manifest. Once you're in India, you'll connect with missionaries who'll help you apply for asylum in a Western country. UK, Canada, US, wherever accepts you first. Asylum? The word felt foreign. You're a religious refugee now, Pastor Michael said gently. You fled religious persecution. You have a legitimate claim. And sister, he smiled, you have the best testimony I've ever heard. When you tell your story, governments will listen. Churches will listen. You're going to help so many people. I couldn't process it. Couldn't imagine standing in front of crowds, telling this story. I just wanted to survive. What about Fatima? I asked. Will she be safe? Will my father punish her? We'll get her out too if needed. We're already monitoring the situation. He stood. You have 8 hours until the ship leaves. Rest. Eat. Pray. And then we move. Those 8 hours felt like 8 minutes and 8 years simultaneously. The underground church fed me, simple rice and curry, the best meal I'd ever tasted. They prayed over me, hands on my shoulders, voices in different languages, all lifting the same name, Jesus. A woman gave me new clothes. Jeans. A plain t-shirt. A jacket. You can't wear that abaya where you're going. You need to blend in. I changed in a bathroom that had no gold fixtures, no onyx bathtub. Just cracked tiles and a mirror and cold water. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. No jewelry. No designer clothes. No title. Just a mirror. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was seeing the real me. At 11 p.m., Pastor Michael drove me to the port in an old van that rattled and smelled like motor oil. We didn't speak. He just prayed quietly under his breath the entire drive. We pulled up to a service entrance. A man in coveralls was waiting, the captain. He nodded at Pastor Michael. Looked at me. You're the princess? Not anymore, I said. He smiled. Good. Princesses are too much trouble. Come on. I grabbed my suitcase. Hugged Pastor Michael. Thank you, I whispered. For everything. Don't thank me. Thank Jesus. He's the one orchestrating all this. He pressed something into my hand. A phone. Old, basic, flip phone. Prepaid. Untraceable. Numbers for the missionaries in India are already programmed. Call when you land. Then he was gone. The captain led me onto the ship, a massive cargo vessel, containers stacked like buildings. He showed me to a tiny cabin below deck. One bed. One porthole window. No luxury. It was perfect. We sail in 20 minutes, he said. Stay in this cabin. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Understood? I nodded. He left. Locked the door from the outside. And I was alone again. I sat on the bed. Felt the ship's engines rumble to life beneath me. Felt the gentle rocking as we pulled away from the dock. Away from Dubai. Away from the UAE. Away from everything I'd ever known. I stood and looked out the porthole. Saw the city's lights fading in the distance. The Burj Khalifa. The Palm Islands. The palace somewhere in that golden glow. Goodbye, I whispered. And then I opened my Bible to the verse Fatima had given me. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. I'd lost a palace. But I'd gained a father. I'd lost $400 million. But I'd gained an eternal inheritance. I'd lost my earthly family. But I'd gained millions of brothers and sisters worldwide. I'd lost my title. But I'd gained a new identity, daughter of the King of Kings. And as the ship carried me away from everything I'd known toward an uncertain future, I realized something profound. For the first time in my life, I was free. Truly, completely, wonderfully free. 3 years later. I'm sitting in a small apartment in London right now. 2 bedrooms. 1 bathroom. A kitchen barely big enough for one person to cook in. The entire apartment could fit inside my old bedroom in Dubai 3 times over. And I've never been happier. Let me tell you how I got here. How Jesus kept every promise he made that night in my palace bedroom. How he turned my story of loss into a testimony of redemption that's reached millions of people around the world. Because if you're watching this video, if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, I need you to know, this isn't just my story. This is an invitation. An invitation to the same Jesus who met me in my darkest hour. The same Jesus who stopped a sword mid-swing. The same Jesus who's been with me every single day since I left that palace. The cargo ship journey to India took 11 days. 11 days in that tiny cabin, eating simple meals the captain brought me, reading my Bible, praying, wrestling with everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. There were moments of doubt. Nights when I'd wake up in a cold sweat, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Mornings when I'd reach for luxuries that weren't there anymore, no maid to bring me coffee, no silk sheets, no view of a glittering city. Just rough blankets and the smell of diesel fuel and the constant rocking of the ship. But every time the doubt came, Jesus met me. Not always in dramatic ways. Sometimes just a verse that jumped off the page exactly when I needed it. Sometimes a supernatural peace that made no sense given my circumstances. Sometimes just the quiet assurance in my spirit, I'm still here. I haven't left you. When we arrived in Mumbai, the missionaries were waiting exactly where Pastor Michael said they'd be. An Indian couple, James and Priya, in their 50s, who ran a safe house for religious refugees. They took me to their home, fed me, let me shower for the first time in almost 2 weeks, and then sat me down to explain the asylum process. It will take time, James warned. Months, maybe years. Applications. Interviews. Documentation. But we've done this before. You'll have a strong case, you're fleeing religious persecution from a royal family. Governments take that seriously. Where should I apply? I asked. UK? Canada? US? All 3, Priya said. Cast a wide net. Whichever one approves you first, that's where God is sending you. So I applied. Filled out endless forms. Sat through interviews with officials who looked at me skeptically, a woman claiming to be a princess from Dubai, living in a Mumbai safe house with no money and no documents except a passport that had been flagged as invalid by the UAE government. How do we know you're telling the truth? One British official asked. I looked him in the eyes. Google my name. Princess Amira bint Abdullah Al Maktoum. You'll find photos of me at royal events. Articles about my family. And then you'll find a very conspicuous absence. I disappeared from all public records 3 months ago. Because they erased me. That's what happens when you leave Islam in a royal family. You cease to exist. He Googled. His eyes widened. And he approved my application. 8 months after leaving Dubai, I landed at Heathrow Airport with refugee status, a work permit, and £200 in my pocket, about $250. Everything I owned fit in the same suitcase I packed that morning in the palace. The British government placed me in refugee housing in East London. A small flat in a tower block, shared with 3 other women, a Syrian, an Iranian, and a Pakistani. All of them fleeing religious persecution. All of them Christians. We became sisters. Aisha, the Syrian, had lost her entire family when ISIS discovered she'd converted. She'd watched her father and brothers killed. She'd escaped through Turkey, survived a boat crossing that killed dozens, and made it to the UK alone. Parisa, the Iranian, had been imprisoned for 2 years for attending an underground church. Tortured. Starved. Released only because her family bribed officials. She fled to Iraq, then Jordan, then finally to London. Zainab, the Pakistani, had been kidnapped at 16 by Muslim men who wanted to force her to marry and reconvert to Islam. She'd escaped with help from a Christian organization that smuggled her out of Lahore. Their stories made mine look easy. And yet every single one of them said the same thing I did: Jesus is worth it. Even with everything I've lost. Even with all the pain. He's worth it. I got a job at a coffee shop in Shoreditch. Minimum wage. Standing on my feet 8 hours a day, making lattes and cappuccinos for customers who had no idea the woman serving them had once lived in a palace. It was humbling. Exhausting. And strangely wonderful. Because for the first time in my life, I was earning my own money. Supporting myself. Building something with my own hands. One day, about 6 months after I'd arrived in London, a woman came into the shop. British, early 40s, warm smile. She ordered a flat white and then lingered at the counter. "I'm sorry," she said. "But I feel like God is telling me to talk to you. This might sound crazy, but, are you a believer?" I smiled. "Yes. I follow Jesus." Her whole face lit up. I knew it. I could sense it. "Listen, I run a ministry that helps refugee women. We provide job training, English classes, counseling. But we're also looking for people to share their testimonies. To encourage others. Would you ever consider telling your story? My story? Where you came from. What Jesus did for you. I don't know your details, but I sense it's powerful." I hesitated. I'd kept my head down for months, afraid of being found, afraid of drawing attention. But something in my spirit stirred. "This is why I saved you," I felt Jesus say. "Not just for yourself. For others." "Okay," I whispered. "I'll tell my story." That first testimony was at a small church in Camden. Maybe 50 people. I stood at the front, trembling, holding my Bible, and told them everything. The palace. The golden cage. Finding Jesus. The confrontation with my father. The sword. The miracle. By the time I finished, half the room was weeping. A woman rushed forward afterward and grabbed my hands. "My son is Muslim," she said through tears. "He's told me he's interested in Jesus, but he's afraid of his family. I've been praying for him for 3 years. And tonight, hearing your story, I have hope again. If Jesus could save a princess from Dubai, he can save my son from Birmingham." That's when I understood, my story wasn't mine alone. It was a weapon. A tool. A testimony that could break through fear and doubt and reach people who needed to know Jesus was real. Word spread. Other churches invited me. Then organizations. Then conferences. Within a year, I was speaking multiple times a month, sharing my testimony, calling people to Jesus, praying with Muslims who were secretly curious about Christianity. And the responses were overwhelming. A Saudi student studying in Manchester who'd been watching Christian videos secretly for months. She heard my testimony and gave her life to Jesus that night. An Emirati businessman in London who'd lost everything to alcohol and gambling. He heard about Jesus appearing in a royal palace and thought, if he's that real, maybe he can fix me too. He came to Christ and is now 2 years sober. A Syrian refugee who'd been so angry at God for allowing her family to be killed. She heard me talk about Jesus stopping a sword and realized, he's not distant. He's not deaf. He's here. And he intervenes. Story after story. Life after life. Changed by the same Jesus who changed me. 2 years after arriving in London, I was invited to share my testimony at a large church in central London, 3,000 people. The pastor had heard about me and wanted me to speak on a Sunday morning. I was terrified. I'd never spoken to a crowd that large. But I prayed, prepared, and showed up. And that morning, as I stood on that stage and looked out at thousands of faces, I felt Jesus next to me. As real as he'd been in my bedroom. As present as he'd been in my father's office. "Tell them," he whispered. "Tell them I'm worth everything." So I did. I told them about the palace. About the emptiness of wealth without purpose. About the terror of that night with the sword. About the miracle. About the escape. About the journey. About the little apartment in East London where I now lived with 3 other refugee women, scraping by on minimum wage and thanking God every single day for his faithfulness. "I lost $400 million, I said, my voice echoing through the sanctuary. I lost my family. My title. My homeland. Everything. And you know what? I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because Jesus is worth more than all of it. He's worth more than every palace, every throne, every crown on earth. He's the King of Kings. And knowing him, really knowing him, is worth losing everything else." The altar call that morning was unlike anything I'd seen. Hundreds of people came forward. Muslims. Hindus. Sikhs. Atheists. Nominal Christians who'd been faking it for years. All of them weeping, kneeling, crying out to Jesus. And in that moment, I understood why I'd lost everything. So others could gain everything. So my story could be a bridge, from Islam to Christianity, from doubt to faith, from death to life. It's been 3 years now since I left Dubai. 3 years since I walked out of that palace with one suitcase and a prayer. Here's what I want you to know about my life now. I work at a Christian nonprofit that helps refugee women. I make £28,000 a year, about $35,000. It's not much by Western standards. By palace standards, it's laughable. But I can pay my rent. I can buy food. I can save a little each month. And every penny I earn feels like a blessing because I earned it myself. I live in that same 2-bedroom apartment in East London. My roommate now is Fatima, yes, the same Fatima who helped me escape. 6 months after I left, my father fired her. Deported her back to Manila. But the underground church network helped her get to London, and now we're roommates. She works as a nurse. We cook together, pray together, go to church together. My bedroom is 10 feet by 12 feet. I have a twin bed. A small desk. A bookshelf with my Bible and a few other books. That's it. And I've never been richer. I haven't spoken to my family since the day I left. My mother sent one email 6 months after I escaped. It said simply, "You are dead to us. Do not contact us again. You have brought shame on our family that can never be erased." It hurt. God, it hurt. I cried for 3 days. But then I opened my Bible to Matthew 10 verse 37, where Jesus says, "Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me." And I understood, Jesus was asking me to love him more. Not to stop loving my family, I still pray for them every single day, but to love him most. Some days I miss my mother. I wonder if my sisters are okay. I see photos of Dubai online, the new developments, the skyscrapers, the luxury, and feel a pang of, not regret. Just grief. Grief for the relationships I've lost. But then I go to church on Sunday and I'm surrounded by my real family. Believers from every nation, every background. People who know the same Jesus I know. People who'd give their lives for me just like I'd give mine for them. And the grief fades. Because I haven't lost my family. I've gained a better one. Now. Let me talk directly to you. To whoever's watching this video right now. Maybe you're Muslim. Maybe you're from a royal family, or a wealthy family, or a strict religious family, and you've been secretly curious about Jesus. You've been watching videos like this in private, clearing your browser history, terrified someone will find out. I see you. I was you. And I need you to hear this, Jesus is real. He's not just a prophet. He's not just a good teacher. He's the Son of God. He died on a cross to pay for your sins, all of them, every single one, and he rose from the dead to prove he has power over death itself. And he's calling you. Right now. Wherever you are, whether you're in Riyadh or Dubai or Kuwait City or London or New York, he's calling your name. Just like he called mine. You might be thinking, but I'll lose everything. My family will disown me. I might be killed. You're right. You might lose everything. But let me ask you, what are you really holding on to? Money that can't buy peace? A family that loves you conditionally? A religion that makes you perform without ever giving you assurance? A life that looks good on the outside but feels empty on the inside? Is that really worth keeping? Because Jesus offers something those things can never give you, unconditional love. Complete forgiveness. Eternal life. A relationship with the God who made you. Purpose. Peace. Joy that doesn't depend on your circumstances. And yes, it might cost you everything. But you'll gain infinitely more than you lose. I lost a palace. I gained the kingdom of heaven. I lost $400 million. I gained treasures in heaven that will never fade. I lost my earthly father. I gained a heavenly father who will never leave me. I lost my title. I gained a new identity, daughter of the King of Kings. Was it worth it? Every single second. Maybe you're wealthy but empty. Maybe you have everything money can buy but you still feel like something's missing. Like there's a hole inside you that nothing can fill. I lived in a palace with 327 rooms and I still felt that hole. Because that hole is God-shaped. And nothing else fits. Not money. Not success. Not relationships. Not experiences. Nothing but Jesus. He's what you've been searching for. He's the missing piece. And he's standing at the door of your heart right now, knocking. Waiting. Inviting you to open the door and let him in. Maybe you're watching this and you're not royal, not wealthy, not Muslim. Maybe you're just lost. Broken. Desperate. You've tried everything else and nothing's worked. Listen to me, Jesus specializes in lost, broken, desperate people. He healed lepers. He ate with tax collectors. He defended a woman caught in adultery. He chose fishermen and outcasts as his disciples. He doesn't want your perfection. He wants your honesty. He doesn't need you to clean yourself up before you come to him. He'll do the cleaning. Just come. As you are. Right now. I'm going to pray a prayer in a moment. And if you want to accept Jesus, if you want to begin a relationship with him, I want you to pray this prayer with me. Out loud if you can. In your heart if you can't. It doesn't have to be these exact words. God hears your heart, not just your vocabulary. But pray something like this. Jesus, I've been running from you. Or maybe I've just never known you. But I'm tired. I'm empty. I'm lost. And I need you. I believe you're the Son of God. I believe you died on the cross for my sins. I believe you rose from the dead. And I believe you're alive right now, listening to this prayer. Forgive me. For everything I've done wrong. For all the times I've chosen other things over you. For all the ways I've failed. I'm giving you my life. All of it. The good, the bad, the broken, the beautiful. It's yours. Save me. Change me. Make me new. I choose you. Even if it costs me everything. Even if I lose my family, my money, my reputation, my life. You're worth it. Be my Lord. My Savior. My King. I'm yours. Now and forever. In Jesus' name, amen. If you just prayed that prayer, if you just gave your life to Jesus, welcome to the family. You're my brother. My sister. We're connected now, forever, through Christ. And I need you to know, the road ahead might be hard. You might face opposition. Persecution. Loss. But you won't walk it alone. Jesus is with you. And so is the global church, millions of believers who will stand with you, pray for you, help you. Find a church. Tell someone what you just did. Get a Bible and start reading. I recommend starting with the Gospel of John. Connect with other believers. Don't try to do this alone. And if you're in danger, if you're facing threats because of your decision, there are organizations that can help. Underground churches. Refugee networks. Ministries that specialize in helping persecuted believers escape. You can contact me through the channels listed in the video description. I can connect you with people who can help. You're not alone. 3 years ago, I stood in a palace and Jesus asked me to give up everything for him. I did. And he's given me back everything that matters. Not money. Not status. Not comfort. But purpose. Peace. Joy. Love. Family. Freedom. A life worth living. A story worth telling. I'm not a princess anymore. I'm a daughter of the King. And that's worth more than any palace on earth. Jesus is calling you. The same way he called me. With the same love. The same offer. The same promise. Will you answer? Will you trust him? Will you take that step, even if it costs you everything? Because I promise you, he's worth it. He's worth losing a palace for. He's worth losing a family for. He's worth losing your life for. Because in losing your life for him, you finally find real life. The life you were always meant to live. Thank you for watching my story. Thank you for staying with me through every chapter, the palace, the persecution, the miracle, the escape, the new life. This isn't just entertainment. This is my life. My testimony. My Jesus. And I'm praying, right now, as I record this, that God will use it to reach even one person who needs to hear it. If that's you, don't wait. Don't wait until tomorrow. Don't wait until it's convenient. Don't wait until you've figured everything out. Just say yes to Jesus. Right now. Today. He's waiting for you. With open arms. With pierced hands that prove his love. With a throne in heaven that he left to come find you. Say yes. And watch him change everything. I lost an earthly kingdom. And gained an eternal one. That's the trade Jesus offers. And it's the best decision I ever made.